In today's video, we are going to explore Jean de la Bruyère quotes which are better known in youth to not to regret in old age. Let's get started. A person's worth in this world is estimated according to the value he puts on himself. A position of eminence makes a great person greater and a small person less. All the world says of a coxcomb that he is a coxcomb, but no one dares to say so to his face, and he dies without knowing it. Avoid making yourself the subject of conversation. Death happens but once, yet we feel it every moment of our lives. It is worse to dread it than to suffer it. Duty is what goes most against the grain, because in doing that we do only what we are strictly obliged to, and are seldom much praised for it. Envy and hatred go together. Mutually strengthened by the fact, they pursue the same object. Extremes are vicious, and proceed from men, compensation is just, and proceeds from God. False modesty is the refinement of vanity. It is a lie. Generosity lies less in giving much than in giving at the right moment. Genius and great abilities are often wanting, sometimes, only opportunities. Some deserve praise for what they have done, others for what they would have done. Hatred is so lasting and stubborn, that reconciliation on a sickbed certainly forebodes death. How happy the station which every moment furnishes opportunities of doing good to thousands! How dangerous that which every moment exposes to the injuring of millions! How sweet, how passing sweet, is solitude! If a secret is revealed, the person who has confided it to another is to be blamed. If it be usual to be strongly impressed by things that are scarce, why are we so little impressed by virtue? If some persons died, and others did not die, death would be a terrible affliction. Impertinent wits are a kind of insect which are in everybody's way and plentiful in all countries. Incivility is not a vice of the soul, but the effect of several vices, of vanity, ignorance of duty, laziness, stupidity, distraction, contempt of others, and jealousy. It is boorish to live ungraciously. The giving is the hardest part. What does it cost to add a smile? It is easier to enrich ourselves with 1,000 virtues, than to correct ourselves of a single fault. It is more or less rude to scorn indiscriminately all kinds of praise. We ought to be proud of that which comes from honest men, who praise sincerely those things in us which are really commendable. It is often easier as well as more advantageous to conform to other men's opinions than to bring them over to ours. It is weakness which makes us hate an enemy and seek revenge, and it is idleness that pacifies us and causes us to neglect it. Languages are no more than the keys of sciences. He who despises one, slights the other. Liberality consists less in giving a great deal than in gifts well timed. Logic is the technique by which we add conviction to truth. Manners carry the world for the moment, character for all time. Mockery is often the result of a poverty of wit. Modesty is to merit what shade is to figures in a picture. It gives it strength and makes it stand out. No vice exists which does not pretend to be more or less like some virtue, and which does not take advantage of this assumed resemblance. Praise, of all things, is the most powerful excitement to commendable actions, and animates us in our enterprises. Profane eloquence is transferred from the bar, where Lemaitre, Pucelle, and Fourcroy formerly practiced it, and where it has become obsolete, to the pulpit, where it is out of place. The fool only is troublesome. A plan of sense perceives when he is agreeable or tiresome. He disappears the very minute before he would have been thought to have stayed too long. The greatest part of mankind employs their first years to make their last miserable. The highest reach of a newswriter is an empty reasoning on policy, and vain conjectures on the public management. The most accomplished literary work would be reduced to nothing by carping criticism, if the author would listen to all critics and allow everyone to erase the passage which pleases him the least. The newswriter lies down at night in great tranquility, upon a piece of news which corrupts before morning, and which he is obliged to throw away as soon as he awakes. The noblest deeds are well enough set forth in simple language, emphasis spoils them. The passion of hatred is so long-lived and so obstinate a malady that the surest sign of death in a sick person is their desire for reconciliation. The pleasure of criticizing takes away from us the pleasure of being moved by some very fine things. The regeneration of society is the regeneration of society by individual education. The same common sense which makes an author write good things, makes him dread they are not good enough to deserve reading. The same vices which are huge and insupportable in others, we do not feel in ourselves. The spendthrift robs his heirs, the miser robs himself. The state not seldom tolerates a comparatively great evil to keep out millions of lesser ills and inconveniences which otherwise would be inevitable and without remedy. The true spirit of conversation consists more in bringing out the cleverness of others than in showing a great deal of it yourself. The very impossibility which I find to prove that God is not, discovers to me his existence. The whole genius of an author consists in describing well, and delineating character well. Homer, Plato, Virgil, Horace only excel other writers by their expressions and images. We must indicate what is true if we mean to write naturally, forcibly, and delicately. There are certain things in which mediocrity is intolerable: poetry, music, painting, public eloquence. What torture it is to hear a frigid speech being pompously declaimed, or second-rate verse spoken with all a bad poet's bombast. There are only two ways by which to rise in this world, either by one's own industry or by the stupidity of others. There are some extraordinary fathers, who seem, during the whole course of their lives, to be giving their children reasons for being consoled at their death. There exist some evils so terrible and some misfortunes so horrible that we dare not think of them, whilst their very aspect makes us shudder, but if they happen to fall on us, we find ourselves stronger than we imagined, we grapple with our ill luck, and behave better than we expected we should. There is no employment in the world so laborious as that of making to oneself a great name. Life ends before one has scarcely made the first rough draft of his work. There is no excess in the world so commendable as excessive gratitude. There is what is called the highway to posts and honor, and there is a cross and byway, which is much the shortest. They who, without any previous knowledge of us, think amiss of us, do us no harm, they attack not us, but the phantom of their own imagination. Those who make the worst use of their time are the first to complain of its brevity. To make a book is as much a trade as to make a clock. Something more than intelligence is required to become an author. Too great carelessness, equally with excess in dress, multiplies the wrinkles of old age, and makes its decay still more conspicuous. Tyranny has no need of arts or sciences, for its policy, which is very shallow and without any refinement, only consists in shedding blood. We come too late to say anything which has not been said already. We meet with few utterly dull and stupid souls, the sublime and transcendent are still fewer, the generality of mankind stand between these two extremes, the interval is filled with multitudes of ordinary geniuses, but all very useful, and the ornaments and supports of the commonwealth. We must laugh before we are happy, for fear we die before we laugh at all. We must strive to make ourselves really worthy of some employment. We need pay no attention to anything else, the rest is the business of others. Whatever is certain in death is slightly alleviated by what is not so infallible, the time when it shall happen is undefined, but it is more or less connected with the infinite, and what we call eternity. When we are dead we are praised by those who survive us, though we frequently have no other merit than that of being no longer alive. When we are young we lay up for old age, when we are old we save for death. When we have run through all forms of government, without partiality to that we were born under, we are at a loss with which to side, they are all a compound of good and evil. It is therefore most reasonable and safe to value that of our own country above all others, and to submit to it. You may drive a dog off the king's armchair, and it will climb into the preacher's pulpit, he views the world unmoved, unembarrassed, unabashed. Please let us know your favorite quotes, from these Jean de la Bruyère quotes which are better known in youth, to not to regret in old age, in the comments section. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel.